Hello students. In previous session, we learnt about the properties of particles of matter. We know that matter is made up of particles. These particles have some properties or characteristics. First property, they are extremely small in size. They have interparticle spaces between them. They keep moving, that is, they are in continuous motion. And these particles of matter always attract each other. That's what we studied in previous class. It should also be noted that attractive forces are present in the particles of a substance. These are called as interparticle forces. And the particle motion would increase with increase in temperature. That is because as we increase the temperature, the kinetic energy of the particles would increase, which means the particle motion would increase with increase in temperature. Usually, when we look around us, matter, what we learned till now, which is made up of particles, can be of three forms. One is solid, liquid, and gaseous form. We all human beings, we can be considered as solids, whereas the water or the liquids we take in will be the liquid form of matter, whereas the air we breathe in represents the gaseous form of matter. The three states of matter that I've mentioned now, that is solid, liquid, and gaseous form of matter, is mainly because of the interparticle spaces present in different kinds of matter. I repeat, the three kinds of matter I have mentioned now, that is solid, liquid, and gaseous, would be mainly because of the interparticle spaces present in different kinds of matter. In solid state, the particles are very closely packed and interparticle spaces are least in number. Whereas in liquid state, these are comparatively more, while these spaces are the maximum in case of gaseous state. Thus, in gaseous state, the particles are very loosely packed in space. And please remember that the classification of matter as solid, liquid, and gas is a physical classification, since the three states of matter exist in three different forms. Also, please remember that this solid, liquid, and gas are not substances. They're not substances, okay? But they are three states of the same substance which differ in interparticle spaces. Okay, this solid, liquid, and gas, they are not substances, but they are the states of matter. Now, say for example, ice, water, and water vapors are the three states of the same substance. Here, the matter is water, whereas water can be of three forms, that is ice, water, and water vapor. Water can be a liquid, it can be a solid like ice, or it can also be in gaseous form, that is water vapors. Now let us briefly discuss the properties of three states of matter. First one, let's begin with solid state of matter. Solids are known generally for their hardness and rigid nature. Some of the properties of solids are as follows. Solids have fixed shapes. Solids can change their shape under force but regain the same when the force is removed. Third, solids keep their volume, which means they have fixed volume. Next property, solids can hardly be compressed on applying pressure. Next, solids have negligible kinetic energy of particles. The last one, solids do not have the property of diffusion. I repeat, solids have fixed shapes. Solids can change their shape under the force but regain the same shape when the applied force is removed. Solids keep their volume, which means that they have fixed volume. Solids can hardly be compressed on applying pressure. Solids have negligible kinetic energy of particles, and solids do not have the property of diffusion. Now let us discuss these properties. Solids have fixed shapes. So a simple example, if we were to consider the pencil we use to draw the diagrams, it doesn't matter you place the pencil inside a geometry box in your hand or wherever it is, the shape of the solid, that is the pencil, is never going to change. That is, these solids, they do not change their shape even when they are put in different containers. So hence, solids always have fixed shapes. These solids can change their shape under force but regain the same when the force is removed. Now let us consider example of a rubber band. If we apply some force onto the rubber band, it is going to stretch. Whereas if you release the force of application, whatever you're putting onto the rubber band, it would regain its original position. Okay, so this will be the property of elasticity. With respect to solids, we study them. So hence it can be stated that solids can change their shape under some force of action, but they regain the same when the force is removed. Next point, solids keep their volume, which means the solids will always have fixed volume. Next point, solids can hardly be compressed on applying pressure. For this, let us consider a simple example. A sponge made of rubber material can be easily compressed. That is, when you apply some force on a sponge, you can compress it. In fact, there are very small or pin-sized holes throughout the body of the sponge in which air is present. When the pressure is applied, the air present inside these pin-sized holes will be expelled or coming out of that place from the holes or pores, and the sponge get compressed. So if you apply some force, okay, that is applying the pressure on a solid, can compress it. This is also one of the property of solids. Next property, solids have negligible kinetic energy of particles. That is, whenever we talk about kinetic energy, we are mentioning the movement of molecules or movement of particles. Here, if we consider solid state of matter, the particles which make up the matter, that is solid state, will hardly move, or there is less kinetic energy which has been linked with respect to the solids. So hence, solids have negligible kinetic energy of the particles. Next point, solids do not have the property of diffusion. When particles of one substance occupy the vacant spaces present in the particles of other substance, we call it as diffusion. I repeat, when particles of one substance occupy the vacant spaces present in the particles of other substance, we call it as diffusion. We already learned that solids have negligible kinetic energy. Due to the absence of kinetic energy in the particles of solid, there is hardly any diffusion, or there is no diffusion. So solids do not have the property of diffusion. Next, we'll learn about liquid state of matter. Some of the important properties of liquid state of matter are as follows. Liquids do not have fixed shapes. Liquids occupy definite volume or keep their volume. Liquids can flow. Liquids have less density as compared to solids. The kinetic energy of the particles in a liquid state is more than in case of solid state. Particles in a liquid state can easily diffuse. I repeat, liquids do not have fixed shapes. Liquids occupy definite volume or keep their volume. Liquids can flow. Liquids have less density as compared to that of solids. the kinetic energy of the particles in liquid state is more than in case of solid state. Particles in liquid state can easily diffuse. Now let us try to understand this point. Liquids do not have fixed shapes. That is, liquids will always take the shape of the container into which we put them. This is due to the reason that interparticle forces are not very strong, and the particles present in one layer can slide over the other layer. As a result, liquids always take the shape of the container. Next point, liquids occupy definite volume. That is, a liquid cannot be compressed on applying pressure. Actually, the interparticle forces in liquids are so strong that the pressure which is applied is not in position to overcome these forces. So therefore, liquids always keep their volume. That is, liquids will occupy a definite volume. Next property, liquids can flow. Unlike solids, liquids have a tendency to flow. This is due to the lesser interparticle or intermolecular forces that is present in the liquid state as compared to the solid state. However, the liquid differ in their flow, that is the amount they flow. For example, water flows at a faster rate than honey because in honey the particles are heavier and also the particles are closely packed. Next point, liquids have less density as compared to solids. That is, they are generally light. This is because greater number of interparticle spaces is present in liquid state as compared to solid state of the same substance. Hence, liquids are less denser. Next point, the kinetic energy of the particles in liquid state is more as compared to solid state. That is, the particles in liquid state are less closely packed as compared to solid state. Because of this, the interparticle forces are weak. That is, the kinetic energy of the particles in liquid state would be more when compared to solid state. Due to lesser interparticle forces of attraction, the particles in liquid state can diffuse more easily than in case of solid. This would also help in intermixing of certain liquids. So, the particles in liquid can easily diffuse.